Hello you gorgeous daughter. Today we're going to be covering what people call the biggest industry plant of all time. This person's name is Bobbi Althoff, and she has one of the most interesting growth spurts I've ever seen. Not in a height, right? I mean, like social media growth. I don't even know how tall she is anyway. People have been debating for years. Is she 5'7"? Or 5'6"? This is insane. She went from posting vlogs about a child and kind of just doing like mummy kind of vlogs to one of the most famous influencers in the world, just like that. In this video, we're going to discuss her growth, discover if she is an industry plant, talk about how she managed to collab with the biggest rappers of all time, and how recently she's kind of fell off. I'm so intrigued by this video. Let's just get into it. So I want to start this off by discussing what an industry plant actually is, because this name gets thrown around so much, and I believe like a lot of people are unfairly labelled as this. An industry plant is a derogatory term used to describe a musician who becomes popular through connections, wealth, or inheritance, rather than their own talent. The term is often used to describe artists who appear independent but are actually backed by a record label. So obviously this term a lot of the time is talked about with musicians rather than influencers. I've seen people in the past call like Sabrina Carpenter or Chapel Roan an industry plant, and to me that is like totally wrong, because if you look at their YouTube channels, they've been working at this for like 10 plus years. There's a saying that it takes years to become an overnight success, and I believe that people like this are unfairly called an industry plant because they've actually worked at the craft and have eventually blew up because of that work. However, with Bobbi, her growth, it's given industry plant in my opinion. Like a lot of her content was content like this, where it's very centered around just like having a baby, the process of going through a baby, and I believe that she did okay off this content. Solely on TikTok, I believe she did quite well.
My daughter keeps trying to crawl, and I do not believe in allowing babies to crawl, so
like obviously, like I don't know if our opinions were quite outlandish, which it was kind of a little bit like rage baity, so then people can like interact with it, and we know how that can take people to the moon sometimes with followers. Well, she suddenly took like a diversion from this content and created a podcast, and one of her first ever guests was Drake. Like, how do you just start a podcast and get Drake on it? Like, that's insane. Like, Drake doesn't do many podcasts, so I remember when this dropped, everyone was going crazy trying to discover who this girl was. It was almost like no one had even like heard of her, because you know, with TikTok, like having 5 million TikTok followers, like that's not, it's not really considered a lot outside of TikTok. It doesn't really carry over that much, and this is where a lot of people started to call her an industry plant. People said that billionaires were backing her because obviously you've got to pay Drake like quite a handsome fee to come on your podcast, like otherwise why is he gonna do it? And when this podcast dropped, I actually watched it within a couple of days of it being released, and I could see that Bobbi's vibe was very kind of like awkward. You could tell she took a lot of inspiration from Amelia, who does Chicken Shop. It was basically her entire vibe, but instead of it being in like a 7-minute video, it was across like an hour-long podcast. Now, Amelia is one of my favorite creators because I believe she really has that style nailed, where she kind of makes the audience feel awkward, she makes her guest feel awkward, like she's totally in control of the situation. It's like a really funny thing to witness, especially when the people who come on the show don't really expect it. However, when you take that sort of style into long form content, like over an hour, in my opinion, no matter how funny you are, it gets boring pretty quickly. There's only so long that style is funny for. Like, I even think if Amelia's videos for like, well, like 20 minutes, you'd kind of get a little bit like burnt out, like because of the energy that's on screen. Now, a perfect example of somebody who has a similar style to Amelia is Caleb Presley. He actually did an interview with Drake, but it was only 11 minutes, and it's very much that awkward style, and it was really funny. However, this podcast with Drake and Bobbi, I just found it really awkward after about 20 minutes.
Am I your type?
I'd do it.
Thank you.
Like I'd do it. You
Not an it.
I know. I just felt like, like
You do it. I asked, am I your type? And you said I do it. It's not funny.
Absolutely riveting. Absolutely blow your socks off this. Make sure you're in a private setting when you listen to this one, guys. Your hair follicles are gonna fall straight off your head. And it made me wonder why she decided to make the videos this long, and I believe it's because she's obsessed with money, because obviously the longer your videos are, the more money you make. Like, if your video is under 8 minutes, you don't make that much money at all because you can't put more ads on it. But if your video is an hour long with Drake in it, That's going to make you a millionaire. And you're going to see later in this video why I believe this actually started the downfall of Bobbi, like a hunger for being richer. Now, there was a lot of drama surrounding this episode after it dropped. It actually got deleted from YouTube, and a lot of people said that it was Drake that told Bobbi to delete it, as he actually unfollowed it on Instagram shortly after this was uploaded, which created so much drama. And Bobbi says in the podcast that she missed the birth of her first child to do this podcast, and obviously, like, at the time, people thought that was just a character, but apparently that was actually true. Like, she missed her daughter's first birthday just so she could sit in a bed with Drake. How many mothers out there would do that, right? Be honest. I want to know. I want this to be the honest hour right now. And the worst part is, as well, she wasn't even single. Like, she was flirting with this guy the entire time. I thought it was a character, but I don't actually believe it was, because shortly after, I believe it was like a week after, her husband filed for divorce after this episode was uploaded. So what does that tell you about this? And obviously this made so many accusations, whether Bobbi slept with Drake, etc. I honestly don't really care if they did. I just know they don't like each other now. But this is another reason why I believe it's so industry planty, because like, it's almost like, oh yeah, they did that and then it's over now. Like, there was no real connection between these two at all. So how did she get him onto the podcast in the first place? I think she said in the past that Drake saw a previous episode of a podcast she did and he liked it and he followed her. But like, is that doesn't just happen. Do you know what I mean? Maybe it did. Okay, maybe it's like she's like a one of one. But it's like, you have to be like the luckiest person in the world for Drake to just ask to come on your podcast. Now, after this episode dropped, she actually did straight away get signed by one of the biggest agencies, talent agencies in the world, WME, who also managed Drake. Again, like, it seems like it's all just kind of like set up step by step. It's such an interesting kind of growth that's happened here. Like, I know being within this space, like, getting the attention of these kind of management agencies doesn't just happen. Like, you have to kind of work for like quite a while to gain the attention of these people, to prove that, you know, that they can invest their time into you. And even though that her Drake episode got deleted, she still had huge names on this podcast. She had Offset, she had Mark Cuban, the billionaire, Shaquille O'Neal, Ryan Garcia. Like, these are like huge names that would charge hundreds of thousands of pounds for a feature. So it's just wild that all of these people have just kind of jumped on our podcast. There's a clip in the Mark Cuban podcast where Mark basically says that Bobbi has the best management that he's ever seen. And again, that stuff doesn't just arrive at your front doorstep. Like, it seems like this has been put in place ever since she started the podcast. It's almost as if like huge rich executives have like picked somebody that they want to kind of make famous and get all of their artists onto this podcast to, you know, just elevate like all of their talents' fame. Now, what often happens with creators that blow up so quickly, a lot of the time, because they haven't kind of done the work underneath to build the foundations, and a lot of the time they don't actually know why they're growing, they're just kind of riding the wave of momentum, they often fall off just as quickly. You see it with UK creators such as like Bevo, etc. Like, they get like such a huge rise, but they haven't like figured out actually how the algorithm works or what their audience actually likes, so they kind of come down and are struggling to kind of get their name back up there. And I believe this is the stage that Bobbi is in now, and I don't know if it's because the people that were invested in her journey have kind of checked out a little bit, but it's kind of sad to see the kind of ride that she's now on. I do believe there is a variety of factors why this might happen. For instance, like, I believe that her whole brand of being awkward, like, that obviously got old quite quickly, so she tried to kind of branch out into just doing her own personality. However, like, in my opinion, like, if you've grew off playing a character, that's what people want to see. Like, if you then start being yourself, people might not like that, and I believe that's kind of what's happened here. Like, she's done loads of podcast appearances where she's talking seriously, and in my opinion, it just takes away from the character that she originally created.
And then I saw this video of a girl talking about how much she made from her podcast, and I think I mentally decided that she made like at least $300 a year on her podcast alone, and I was like, that's what I need to do next. Like, I need a podcast. So I started it. It was first called So You're Rich. And yeah. And I was interviewing rich people.
Money, a recurring theme.
I didn't grow up with money. I am on a lifelong journey to get money.
You want money.
I love my life now. I love that I'm able to take care of my family. I love, like,
I don't know if I'm just being too harsh here, but this, like, if I had to go and watch her now be in character of awkwardness, I'm like, well, I know this is fake, so the magic's kind of gone here. You know what I'm saying? It's like, imagine in the Mr. Bean movie, Mr. Bean halfway through just goes, you know what, actually, I just can't be asked to do this anymore. Like, can someone just, like, give us £1 million? Like, you'd be like, well, you can't just go Teddy anymore. It just doesn't work. It's just that original person that interviewed Drake. Like, it looked like she was kind of like a normal, awkward kind of girl, and clearly this isn't the case here. This entire thing has been manufactured. And I believe this is why a lot of our viewers have kind of checked out. There's also a lot of times on our podcast, I think it was part of a character where she kind of cosplays as being poor. Cosplays as being poor, what a phrase.
How much money do you have?
Right now?
Yes.
I can check. Do you want me to check?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Whatever it is, minus
$306.
$306
Yeah.
minus the $1,200 for the massage.
Yeah.
You're going crazy right now. How you getting home?
Like, I don't know if there's an audience for somebody that's pretending to be poor. However, they've had guests like Drake, which that video had like 20 million views. Like, if we even just look at her channel right now, this podcast has 5.4 million views, which was our first ever episode. I obviously don't know the exact figure here, but I would say just off revenue alone, off YouTube views, that probably made about £50,000. So clearly she doesn't have $300 in her account, especially when you pair this with like a podcast clip where she says that she actually has a lot of money and she can look after her family. It's like, what is the character she's kind of going for here? Is she only a character when she's in the podcast? Do you know what I mean? It's just really, really off. I honestly don't get it, and I'm just confused by it.
I don't have any money
None?
at all. I have debt, actually.
You have debt? How much debt do you have?
Right now, I have like $20,000 in debt.
That sucks. Is that from school or is that from...
No, from my podcast.
Oh, for your podcast? What'd you
Yeah.
borrow money for?
Borrowed it from the bank to, like, I put it on a credit card. Just every episode that I film, I spend a lot of money on.
Wow.
I haven't made any
Why don't
money.
you come to me and, like, invest?
Like, again, like the way she's talked about is like in a fun way that she's in debt, etc. When clearly she's not. Like, even this one episode with Mark Cuban would have paid off that debt like 3 or 4 times over. Whenever I used to see her content, I used to like double check myself and be like, you know what, maybe I'm just being too harsh here. Like, I'm not really in a community, so I probably just don't get it. But when I've researched into her, I still just don't understand how people actually followed this person. Like, there's no real journey here, or there's nothing to really get invested in. Like, it honestly blows my mind how she's got so huge. People have also said that her ex-husband that she split up from after the Drake podcast was actually a multi-millionaire as well. So, you know, surely after the divorce, would you not have got like money from that? Also the money you've made from being a TikToker yourself. She also said in this podcast that we previously looked at that she was earning like 200 or 300,000 pound a year from mummy vlogs. I don't understand why she's admitting this, but then still playing this character on podcast, because then nobody believes it and nobody can get invested in it anymore. I kind of feel a little bit bad for her, because she's clearly been put into this position by like huge people and invested in heavily, and it must be very hard to kind of keep our storylines kind of in check with each other. And I believe when our views started to kind of drop a little bit, she kind of just got rid of the character and started just being like, I guess, herself.
I am so tired of all of the comments of people saying she ruined her face and she can't even move her face, it's so frozen, she has so much filler. Let me just set the record straight real quick. One time and one time only. Actually, this is 2 times now. The only thing I have done to my face is that I have a little bit of filler in my upper lip.
Like, obviously it's not very nice that people are making, you know, judgment on our appearance. Like, nobody deserves that, no matter how famous you are, how much money you have, or how much of an industry plant you are. But this is clearly like her being honest here, talking like being vulnerable, talking about stuff that's actually affecting her. But what about the character? Like, the character wouldn't get bothered by this. The character would probably make like a sarcastic comment about this. It's just so confusing. I don't understand her brand at all. However, one thing that I do feel bad for her for is when people get hate, like, it can be very overwhelming, and I can tell that it's overwhelming for her because she's been a lot less active on all of our social platforms. For instance, she was posting quite consistently with our podcast before, and the views were really, really good. Like, we see here 5.4 million, nearly a million, 2.9, 5.6. Like, for a podcast, that makes it one of the biggest podcasts in the world, getting views like that. I think like Joe Rogan's considered the biggest podcast in the world on YouTube. Like, she's absolutely storming them with them views. However, recently, like, she hasn't posted in a month or over a month, and this is meant to be the new season of our show. And if you look at the views here, she's only got 70,000. However, she has Tiger in it too. you know, you could argue is as big as the other artists she's had on. Now, I don't know if this is because her label or the people that were investing in it have kind of checked out and aren't putting paid ads for our content anymore, so it's not getting pushed out as much and just having to actually rely on the content being good. But it is so sad to see, because now she's lost that momentum. It's like, how do you get that back if you haven't got the backing of like these huge corporations? I did click on this Tiger podcast just to kind of get a vibe of like how good the content and the editing is, and I was actually shocked when watching this how little effort goes into it.
Marco told me I should start vlogging, so that's what we're trying to do here. Rolling Loud flew me out and put me in a hotel, and then I got to kind of just go around and make some content.
I just want to come in really quickly and say you're about to see some ads, and I know that can be frustrating sometimes, but I want to thank you guys all so much for watching my ads, for using my codes.
What? I got told Tiger was in this. First off, there was just a black screen with just text on, just the basic text. Secondly, you vlogged, but it was just your voice with no music, no like sound at all, just you on a golf buggy, and then you're straight into some adverts. Like, what? Like, there's just zero effort here. You know, when like you see Emma Chamberlain or like, you know, somebody like that where it looks very low effort, but there's actually a lot of thinking going on here and these people are insanely clever. This is just low effort. This is just scraping the barrel, just posting this because I have to, because I want to put my brand deal in it. And this just indicates to me that this is like given all the signs of an industry plant, because somebody that has worked at their craft for years to get the opportunity to blow up wouldn't be at this level for where their social status is, if you get us. Like, this is taking the out of your audience, just putting no effort into the start of the video and then just reading out all of your ads because you want to put some extra M's in your bank account. There's like 2 ads here, and then it's into a vlog, and then she like interviews Tiger for like a minute, and then it's another advert. We've had about 4 or 5 adverts in the first 6 minutes. This is the wildest creator I think I've ever seen for like being so famous, but the level of their content being of someone who has like 20 subscribers. It just interests me a lot because I do this as a job, and when I see growth like this, obviously there's normally a lot you can take from it because you can learn from people, or you can kind of see like, oh, they've kind of done it this way, like how can I implement that into my content? With this creator, it's like, it honestly stumps me, and I do this for a living. I know how people grow, and I don't understand this. I'm just clicking through this video. Half of this video is just ads. Like, she's already done the SeatGeek and the Aura ad, and then they're just put back in. It's just scraping the barrel. And it just proves to me that you really can't like skip the process. Like, I've been working at this for like 7 or 8 years, and I hope this video doesn't come across as if I'm like jealous, because I'm really not, because I actually was really happy that somebody like this has been given the opportunity to like grow the space. But it's so annoying when you see people get given these such great platforms and then they just kind of take it for granted because obviously they haven't kind of done the work leading them up to this moment. I've seen it a couple of times where like KSI or like other big creators have like shouted somebody out and they get this huge growth spurt and then they just kind of waste it, and it's like really sad to see, because these are life-changing opportunities that people kind of throw away. Another indication to me that Bobbi could be an industry plant is she gets invited to do loads of like prestigious interviews with companies such as Forbes. They uploaded this interview with her, which is called Bobbi Althoff, the deadpan podcast host America can't get enough of. And obviously with that title, that infers that she's kind of taken over America, like people just want more of her. Yet this video has such little interaction, and it's been out for a month. Like 10,000 people have seen it and only 60 comments, and most of the comments are kind of just like clowning on the fact that this has got no interaction. So it just makes me ask myself, like, who is actually invested in this person's content? It kind of reminds us of, do you know those like artists on Capitol? For instance, like I've never heard somebody say, oh yeah, I'm a huge Jess Glynne fan. Yet Jess Glynne has millions of views on her songs, and she's always on Capitol. Bobbi kind of could be like the new generation of like a radio influencer, I want to say. Do you know what I mean? Where everyone knows her name, but no one really kind of follows what she's doing. Again, I do feel sorry for her, because there's been various podcasts where she kind of has opened up and kind of broke down about how it's kind of been hard being thrusted into the limelight like this. And although she will be making millions of pounds, I can imagine like all of these comments can't be nice to kind of read, because clearly she does get affected by them, by some of the videos that we've covered in this video. It'll be interesting to see what you think about this person, because I feel like loads of people have heard of her, but nobody's actually really invested in her. But let me know what you think. If you would like more like inside the industry breakdowns like this, let us know. Like 3,000 likes on this video and I'll take a look at other people I can do this on. And if you want to watch another video from me, click this video right here. Go on, have a laugh. Go on.
Kirkham, baby.